And welcome back to another week of 21st Century Rocker Mom podcast with me, your host. Hello, Tanya Candler. Welcome back. It's episode 52. Holy smokes, we're here. And it's 2022. 2022, I will tell you, has not been a good year for celebrity deaths. We started off really, really rough. First, we lost Bob Saget. And that's hard because he was America's, dad. He was, Danny Tanner on Full House, but then he was also the filthiest comic I've ever heard. I like the joke that I remember from him specifically was like something about putting a box on his lap and wanting to show him on a puppet show. But then I remember him as Danny Tanner and this like really nurturing father with all these like father-daughter heart-to-heart talks. So that one was weird. It didn't affect me too much, but then Betty White passed away and I know she was almost 100. Okay, you know what? I know how much she was biologically. I know how old she was, okay? I know the number. But Betty White wasn't supposed to die. So it's been a rough year, definitely, for celebrity deaths. So, I mean, and then celebrity deaths, speaking of celebrity deaths, like I say, ones don't affect me. One that definitely did was, and this was years ago, but Anthony Bourdain. And finally this year, this has been the triumph of my year, Rob and I finally got a chance to watch the documentary Roadrunner. I know it's been out for a while and we kind of missed the boat a little bit, and we missed the trip on that. But what can I say? Roadrunner was an absolutely terrific film. Shocking, but terrific. Absolutely raw. And it was truthful. And like from beginning to end, it was like a roller coaster ride with Tony Bourdain. I loved Anthony Bourdain. I still love Anthony Bourdain. I think he's one of the best cooks and one of the best writers, definitely, that I've ever heard. I think he could easily be narrating anything that I would just watch. You know what I mean? Because he was such an interesting writer. And I mean, it was a wonderful but very tragic story of Anthony Bourdain. And I mean, a lot of his friends and very close people around him that were surrounding him weighed in on, kind of the situation. And I mean, near the end there, it got dark. It got really, really dark. I mean, you're talking about a guy who kicked his heroin habit in the 80s. And I mean, everyone in New York, apparently was, this is what I read. Everyone in New York, in books, not on the internet. I read in books. I read some things on the internet, but mostly I read books. But he kicked his heroin habit in the 80s. And the guy had kind of, addictive personality, but he had food and he really liked to work and really loved writing and smoke like a chimney. But just exceptionally good at everything that he did, I think. Everything that he kind of sunk himself into. And towards the end there, it got really dark with Asia Argento. And I know she's, millionth generation crazy Italian actress, as he calls her, crazy Italian actress in every email. This is what I get from the film. He doesn't refer to her as Asia or Asia or Argento when he's referring to her as other people. Only when he's speaking to her, he refers to her in his emails as crazy Italian actress. So let me tell you, and I understand that Asia Argento, like I say, she's Italian film royalty, and she was part of the Me Too movement, which helped bring Harvey Weinstein, not to justice, but to jail at least, for all the things and the misgivings and the sexual misconduct that he has been involved in the past, present, and God knows what else. But Asia Argento herself has been kind of involved in that, and that movie just kind of really did it for me with her. I've not really had a super, how do I say this nicely? I've not had a super soft spot for her. And when her and Anthony Bourdain started dating, and then I saw that movie and someone said this, he said, this is not going to end well. He emailed someone, like a friend of his, and said, it was also a producer, writer, camera operator, someone in his life that was close with business, and said, this is not going to end well. And I mean, it didn't. Look what happened. He passed away. He took his own life. He took his own life in a hotel room in France. Like, it's tragic. You know what I mean? And I mean, he got wind that she was with another guy. He got absolutely addicted to her, just like he did with heroin, food, everything else. You can get addicted to anything or any one person, and that's dangerous. Becoming completely addicted to someone, and then, you could see her kind of moving away from him and pushing him away a little bit, and him kind of laying it on thicker, which is a lot of the time what you do when you're addicted to anything. So it's hard. You try it. He's got a monkey on his back, and he was always kind of chasing the dragon, I guess you want to call it. If they used to call that, they used to call it that in the old days, chasing the dragon, always kind of chasing that next thing, always chasing that next high. And, you can chase the dragon and you can do that for a while, but it only works for so long. And then, I'm sorry, but it's curtains. And especially when it's with things like drugs and substances, you can only do these things for so long. And I mean, I'm glad I'm alive to be here with you after being young and, you know what I mean, and drinking a lot and things like that. It's good to be here and sober. I'm glad to be alive to do that live that we did the other night with Kitty. Anyone who showed up for that, I am really, really happy that you did. And I'm grateful because we got the original lineup, the Spit lineup of Kitty, kind of back for a live thing to celebrate the 22nd birthday of Spit. Because I can't believe it's been 22 years. Speaking of old dead things, holy shit, how old are we? So we celebrated that. We did a live. It was fun. It was like a lot of people that we knew kind of showed up. It was nice to see everybody there. A lot of people from the message boards, people we've known for years from all over the place. And it's great to see everybody still come together. It's a good place to be. You know what? When you listen to Kitty, you belong here. I don't care where you're from, what you look like, who you are, what your gender is, what pronoun you use. I don't care who you are. When you're listening to music and stuff like that, those things are transcendent. I don't care who you are. You belong here. Kitty was formed on being misfits. So you know what? If you're listening to Kitty and you're just tuning into Spit, guess what? You belong here because we were misfits too. And you know what? I'm still a misfit. But I will tell you, I want to talk more about celebrity death. So we're not going to talk about his live people because I bet you Elvis is in a truck stop somewhere. Someone's seen Elvis in a truck stop somewhere this weekend. That'll be a different show altogether. But I want to talk about, let's face it, this year's been hard for celebrity deaths, but the hardest thing for celebrity deaths has been the number 27. 27 has been a brutal, brutal year for deaths, especially with musicians and people in the music industry and the pop culture industry. I will say it's been absolutely brutal. And it started, I would say, with Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones. And it kind of went on from there. And it was like, it kind of became what was known as a really sick cultural phenomenon, but a very serious cultural phenomenon be called the 27 Club. And a lot of people equate certain things with the 27 Club, and there are many members of the 27 Club, and there's many ways that they got there. And I mean, let's go down the rabbit hole, shall we, with the 27 Club? Let's get depressed together. We're going to go with the first one, obviously. I mean, let's face it, this is Come As You Are. Kurt Cobain, the 27 Club, Kurt Cobain, he's at the top of the pops for me because he was a huge influence for me. Grunge was a huge influence for me. Absolutely. Like between Nirvana and Hole, I mean, just alone, grunge was huge for me. So when Kurt Cobain died, it was gigantic. And he was 27 years old. Some people say he died from a self-inflicted shotgun wound to the head, and they say it was ruled a suicide. Other people have many conspiracy theories. Courtney Love did it. Dave Grohl did it. It was people looking for drug money that did it. It was, it was a friend. El Duce did it. Everyone remembers El Duce. If you saw Kurt and Courtney, holy shit. You remember that interview they did with El Duce when they went to his yard, his junkyard. He was like some kind of junkyard fucking luchador. Goddamn El Duce. He was the scariest motherfucker I've ever seen in my life. And he says, yeah, Courtney Love, yep, she paid me to whack Kurt Cobain. And it's like 3 months later, El Duce died of a drug overdose. It's like, no shit, El Duce, drugs are bad. Drugs are very bad. So that, I mean, it really didn't happen. But that bullshit luchador definitely said that Courtney Love paid him. I don't think that Courtney Love did it. I think that Courtney Love is a nice Buddhist. And I have nothing bad to say about Courtney Love. So let me just clear that up there. But yeah, Kurt Cobain was one of the ones that, definitely hit and like hard with me. And that's what hit the 27 Club. It made me think. Even as young as I was at the time, I remember I was like in grade God, I would have been in grade 6. I would have been in grade 6 when Kurt Cobain died. I remember the class I was in. I was in Mr. Inman's class. And I remember one of the girls in my class had a magazine, and it was a People magazine, and it had Kurt Cobain on the front. And they had like vigils to him, and people with like pictures of him, like with candles around his picture, and people had brought flowers and all kinds of things. And I remember watching the video of the vigil in Seattle where Courtney played like a tape. And she said, you know, it's better to burn out and then to fade away. And she cried. And I remember how it affected me then, being like that young, like in grade 6. And I remember us crying like in school about it. So I remember grunge being like a huge thing. And then obviously with Hole, Kristen Pfaff passing away right in the light of Kurt Cobain's death. Kristen Pfaff played bass for Hole in one of the first, or second rather, iterations of Hole, only to be replaced later after her death by Melissa Aufdermauer, Canadian girl. We love Melissa Aufdermauer, but Kristen Pfaff passed away. She died of a heroin overdose in the bathtub, and she was just about to move, and she was just about to get away from the whole scene and kind of get clean and sober. And I think what she did was something they refer to as spinning dry, where you kind of get sober, and then you take as much as you did when you were using heavily, and then she fell asleep in the bathtub and drowned. And so Courtney Love got a call and someone said, you know, your bass player is dead. And she thought, you know, well, what am I going to do now? So she got a new bass player, and that was that. Now, you might remember the next person who was in the 27 Club from Stephen King's It, the original one. I'm talking the one with Tim Curry, okay? I'm not talking the new one with the weird It with the weird head or anything like that, and any CG bullshit. I'm talking OG, Stephen King's It, Tim Curry, John Ritter. God bless John Ritter with a beard. And Beverly Marsh. Jonathan Brandis was in that movie. Now, Jonathan Brandis, you might remember him from Sequest. He was like a teenage heartthrob. He was on the front of magazines like Tiger Beat, if you remember those. Anyone in Canada, I did not buy them because my boy crush was like Joey Lawrence or like JTT or something. There's nothing my love can't fix for you, baby. But really, Jonathan Brandis, he hung himself after his acting career kind of went flop. He couldn't deal with the pressure anymore, and he committed suicide, unfortunately, and he hung himself. He became part of the 27 Club. Amy Winehouse, definitely one of my favorite singers, definitely influenced by a lot of my favorite different singers. They all kind of meshed together, but Amy Winehouse was definitely the look, her style. When I first heard Amy Winehouse, I knew she sang right from her soul. And then I saw her, and I saw this tiny little woman with this gigantic hair and big eye makeup. And, you know, I kind of saw a little bit of myself in her. And then I saw how she suffered with substance abuse. And if anyone's seen Amy, I mean, it's like the film. It's a heartbreaking story. I mean, that girl was used up and then thrown in the garbage, like absolutely used. And I think that's why she joined the 27 Club. Honestly, I think if Amy Winehouse was taken care of and had proper handlers, as they used to call them back in the day. Apparently that's not cute anymore. I don't know what they call them now, but if she had more people taking care of her and she had more people on her side, more people in her corner, not just caring about her making a fast buck and, you know, capitalizing on her talent, because she had so much of it in her 27 years, she would have joined that club. And she got sober. I mean, Amy Winehouse got to the other side of it. She left that horrible fuck of a husband of hers, Blake Fielder Civil. What a piece of fucking garbage. He deserves a golden throat punch award. He introduced her to the hard drugs and the heroin and all that stuff. I mean, before that, she was drinking heavy and maybe she was smoking a little reefer, but she wasn't doing heroin or, you know, smoking crack rocks or doing things like that. He introduced her to that drug world and he brought her into that world. And I think that's fucking unforgivable, personally, to me, for someone to have that profound influence over another person. I think it's disgusting. I mean, she got away from it, but then she was forced, you know, to kind of, before she was ready, after, you know, half a stint in rehab, to go back on tour. And you could tell she was shaky. She wasn't ready to go. And she got sober. And then one day she didn't get sober. She passed away. She had I believe, what was a cardiac arrest. And the autopsy report that that was published rather said she had 5 times the legal amount of alcohol in her system. And so I don't know what that is in England, but for a tiny little woman, that's probably a lot. So enough probably to stop your heart. So losing Amy Winehouse, to me, that was one that was really personal, because she really resonated with me, because I had my struggles with substances way, way back in the day, my early 20s. And Amy Winehouse had her struggles too. And like, I came out of it, obviously, and she did not. And so that one hit hard. And obviously there was the groups from the 70s and the 60s, and which is really scary. I mean, in 1971, Jim Morrison died. I mean, he died in the bathtub. It was ruled a cardiac arrest, that his heart stopped while he was in the bathtub in Paris in 1971. But there was never an autopsy, and there was never any really medical record or any looking into it to say that that is how he died. It's rumored that Jim Morrison is still alive and somewhere in Paris. God only knows where, probably covered with a beard. But I mean, his wife died a few months after that, and also of a apparent cardiac arrest from actually a heroin overdose. And speaking of heroin overdoses, we lost Janice Joplin. And again, what a voice and what a talent. All these people that you lose, they're so full of energy and talent. And we're going to talk about a little bit about why we lose these people and how we lose these people, and why we lose these big balls of energy in such a violent and horrible way at such a young age. We'll get into that a little bit later. Janice Joplin was a absolutely iconic singer, absolutely lady of the blues. She could sing anybody out of a room, like really. Like, she'd be the only person in the room. Everybody's eyes were on Janice Joplin. She was an absolute phenomenon. She was an absolute fabulous just spectacle to look at. Even the way she moved on stage, she was magical. And unfortunately, she dove to the bottom of a bottle of Jack Daniels with some heroin and never came back in a hotel room one night. She just never woke up. So it was a heroin overdose and alcohol for her. And another musician that she toured with, who was on Woodstock as well, Mr. Jimi Hendrix, Light Your Guitar on Fire, Voodoo Child, Purple Haze is in My Brain. He passed away as well. And he passed away while he was having some turbulence in his life as well. At the age of 27, he took too many sleeping pills one night, and he went to sleep, and he did not wake up from that. So, like, let's just put it out there right now, people. If you learned anything from this at all, you've learned one thing completely. As I sit here and drink my sparkling water, it's vanilla cherry soda. It's supposed to taste like a Dr. Pepper, but it's got no sugar. I've been drinking a lot of Coca-Cola lately. But what is the one thing we have learned from this situation? That drugs are fucking bad for you. Don't do drugs. If you're doing drugs, like, what the fuck, man? You're gonna die. One of these days, it's gonna happen. You're gonna take too much of something, and it's gonna happen. And it'll probably happen when you're 27 years old. So your takeaway today is, don't do those motherfucking drugs. They're gonna kill you. Especially that heroin. That's scary. Again, Brian Jones, he was the one who kind of started the whole 27 Club dead kind of like thing. When he died, they found at the bottom of a swimming pool, but they say when his body, he was kind of like moving away from the Rolling Stones at the time. They didn't want him in the band. They said his temper was getting erratic. He was getting really stoned on drugs a lot. And when they found him, he was at the bottom of his swimming pool, and his girlfriend was there. And when paramedics arrived, apparently he still had a pulse. Apparently. This is what they say. So I don't know if this is another conspiracy theory, but I love to go down the rabbit hole about these. Not that I necessarily believe them, but you know, it's interesting to go down the hole of conspiracy theories, and we'll talk about conspiracy theories later. Jean-Michel Basquiat, obviously, he was an artist affiliated with Andy Warhol, the late great Andy Warhol, who did a lot of pop art in the 60s and things like that. Did a lot of different movies and things like that. A lot of things that I like personally. He did the Campbell soup cans, if you remember those kind of pop art sort of things. But Jean-Michel Basquiat, he also died of a heroin overdose. And he was an absolute, like, brilliant artist, visual artist, and painter. Just absolutely amazing. So amazing that Andy Warhol picked him up and really wanted him as as a muse and someone to be around in his circle and things like that. And after Andy Warhol passed away, Jean-Michel, I don't think he felt happy anymore. He started using more and more. And it was a popular time, unfortunately, for people using heroin. It was common. It was common when people went to Studio 54 and how common cocaine was in New York in the 80s, in the late 70s. It was just a fucking cesspool of drugs and crime. It was terrible, absolutely terrible. Speaking of absolutely terrible, another person to join the 27 Club was Anton Yelchin. Oh my God. And he was, I think he was a doll, an absolute doll. He will always be an absolute doll to me. Having him on Star Trek, on the reboots, on the movies, was just amazing. He was just lovely. And he died in a freak accident. He didn't kill himself. He didn't have any substance abuse. He didn't, he didn't die in any sort of way that I've mentioned yet. He went to park his car outside of his house or something, and the emergency brake went off, and he was pinned between a stone pillar and his car. And by the time anyone came to kind of help him, he was already passed away upon arrival, DOA. So that is what happened to him. So a freak accident with him was terrible. Robert Johnson, you know what I mean? The father of the blues. Apparently he sold his soul to the devil, and he took it at 27 years old. And I mean, obviously we have Pigpen from the Grateful Dead, who lost his life at 27 years old also. I mean, there are lots of reasons that people lose their lives at 27. And we're going to go into the return of Saturn and why shouldn't we? Because, I mean, let's go into some weird numerology and some pseudoscience. And I know that this isn't an exact science because I believe in actual science, but this is something that, like cryptozoology. It's not an exact science, and a lot of people kind of make fun of it, but it's fun. Like astrology, and I love it. I love it. I think it's campy. I think it's fun. I think it's weird. And let's get weird, because obviously the weirder, the better. Spiritual reasons why these things happen. Astrology, numerology. Numerology, number one, is it's the spiritual study of numbers, and you always add each digit together so it equals down to the sum of just one. So if you've got 3 numbers, you got to put them together. If you got 1, 2, 3, it equals 1 plus 2 plus 3. You know what I mean? So you get 6. So the age of 27, for example, goes 7 plus 2, or 2 plus 7, which equals 9. 9 is a really high vibrating number, they say, on the number scale. And as far as transitions in energy, there's a lot of transitions in energy that happen in the year of 9, or in that time of your life. It's the year where a 9-year energy cycle ends, when you go back to your 0 or your 1. So think of going back. So all the crazy things have happened. But buckle up, motherfuckers, because 27 is fucking crazy. I will tell you, 27 was fucking absolutely nuts for me. 27, and I will get this to you. I will get this to you later. It was the most horrifying time of my life. Absolutely the hardest time and darkest time I've ever had in my life. So I will say that even in the tarot deck, that 27 means, I think the 9 represents in the tarot deck, and with this numerology, it represents the tower. And the tower has to crumble down all the way down to nothing to start to build a foundation of something totally new up again. And so that's kind of where 27 is for a lot of people. And a lot of the things, and a lot of the reasons that people pass away at that age is because a lot of transitions and a lot of things come to go to the next level at 27 years old. But there's a lot of things with musicians and people in that pop culture world where other things are involved. There's addictions, there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's managers, there's pressures, there's hangers-on, there's vampires, there's people that are just not out there for you. Like I say with Anthony Bourdain and things, there are more people looking out for people. I don't think certain things would have happened. I don't like it. I don't like it. If some of these people can't sort through this bullshit pressure on their own, imagine trying to sort through this fucking pressure in the public eye with all these people watching. So obviously you're going to get addicted to substances and things to numb the pain, because you just want it to go away and you want everybody to fuck off. And some of these people, they took it too far. Like I say, they took too much. They did too much. They didn't use a healthy form of a coping mechanism, and it backfired on them. And, you know, these coping mechanisms, you know what I mean? There's so many things that we've learned now that we can do when our foundations are crumbling down that we can do. I mean, coping mechanisms, we don't have to reach out to these substances anymore. We can reach out to friends. We can reach out to, you know, I mean, social media platforms. We reach out to total strangers and people that we don't know. We have way more places to reach out to now. I mean, if you're hurting, there are places to reach out to. If you're hurting, God damn it, reach out to me. There are suicide hotlines. I mean, don't ever be quiet if you're hurting. If someone's hurting you, let somebody know about it, because that's the only way anyone's going to know. And obviously, these people could not deal with these big emotions and these big feelings, and they tried to, you know, push them down. And anytime you try to kind of repress those big emotions and those big feelings, and you try to hold those things down, they're about to, you know, bubble up and gurgle up and come out in a way like, you know, a volcano. And if you let them out, you know, you're probably safe. But if you keep that stuff bottled up inside, it's not so good for you. It's a tragic cultural phenomenon, and it's really an obsession. There's so many things in movies and shows about the 27 Club. I mean, all you have to do is deep dive down through YouTube or do a search on Netflix or people that have died at 27. You might even not find anything that you like, but, you know, 27 is hard. Like, and I say 27 was hard for me. It was the worst time of my life. When I was 27, it was terrible. I was working in a dental office, and I was working for this lady, and she was I say lady, but I should really say broad, because she was a fucking broad. There was nothing ladylike about this woman. She was a fucking bitch, and I should have sued the fucking shit out of her then, but I didn't. This was years and years and years ago. We're talking 2010, okay? So this was horrible. And it was in January, real close to my birthday. I was working at her office, and we use universal precaution, something in medicine that everyone uses. You assume that everybody's crawling with everything. You just assume that everybody's sick, so you treat everybody the same. You use the same masks, same gloves, PPE. You always change them. You know what I mean? Everybody gets the same treatment. And you have to make sure that everybody is being treated the same. I never looked at people's medical histories because I treated everybody the same. You don't discriminate against patients because they've got a certain, you know, disease or anything. This day, she happened to poke me with a fucking needle. And then literally after the patient left the room, she went, "Oh, fuck." And I went, "Well, you know, what?" And that patient's HIV positive. And I was just like, "Oh, fuck." So, I mean, I went to the sink and I did my thing that I knew to do. My CPR course taught me my first aid to, you know, bleed it out and make sure it's washed properly. And then I went to the hospital and got a tetanus shot. And then I proceeded to go on, which I'm going to watch this Farmer Bro documentary soon. Speaking of death at 27, Jesus. The guy takes the AIDS cocktail, the protease cocktail, the antiviral cocktail that you have to take, and that many people who are living with HIV and AIDS are taking every single day. And believe me, I've taken it. I took it to avoid getting HIV and AIDS, and I never did get HIV or AIDS. I never developed it, but I had to be checked yearly for 10 years until 2020. I had to be checked for AIDS and HIV because of this positive needle stick. So the patient that I got stuck with, thank goodness their viral load in their body was undetectable. So basically that means the rate of transmission was very, very low. So with something like COVID, for instance, where viral load is very high, that's the reason we wear masks, as a droplet infection. There's a higher chance of getting it, like something like polio. Why don't we have polio anymore? The chances of getting polio are very minute. Number one, we have vaccinations that work. Number two, again, we vaccinate. Even though the chances are really small that we're going to get polio, we vaccinate anyway. What are the chances that we're going to get COVID? Huge, especially this new Omicron thing. So, you know what I mean? I don't mean to be a Vaxie Valerie here, but seriously, roll up your sleeves, assholes. Don't be a dick. I don't care if this makes me unpopular. So make me unpopular. I had a brush with death with needles too, so now I get needles all the time. Mostly booster shots. But yeah, like I say, I'm happy to be here with you And that was definitely scary. I want to watch this Farmer Bro movie and see what happened to the most hated man in America, and see what happened when he jacked the price up of the protease cocktail for patients living with HIV and AIDS. I couldn't believe this woman, after a month taking this antiviral cocktail, she fired me. And she said, I don't have room for people like you at my office. I'm like people like coming to work every day puking their guts out. I cannot imagine how folks living with HIV and AIDS take this medication every day to survive when it makes you feel like you're fucking dying. I have the utmost sympathy for anyone who is trying to take that medication to live. I hope sincerely that from that many years ago that things pharmaceutically have improved and side effects have changed, but I don't think, they have. And so that's when lots of things fell apart in my life. I was 27 years old. It was probably the darkest period of my life, but there's a light over at the Frankenstein place. Seriously. However, I had to dig myself out and, myself. The cavalry was not coming for me, because the cavalry is never really coming for you. You have to dig your damn self out of there, your own self. And like I say, I dug myself out. I was better, and things kind of turned out for the best. Eventually got through 27, thank Christ. Made some weird decisions. Good things happened. I had my son. Then subsequently I met the love of my life. Things are good. I had my daughter. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. So you even get through that 27 to 30 kind of period. It's real bumpy as fuck. It's a bumpy road, but hang on. You're going to get there. Like I say to everybody, it's really a process. Everything's really a process. And you'll get there. And now I want to talk to you about conspiracy theories, because I talk about dead celebrities. Let's talk about Paul McCartney and the Paul McCartney is dead theory. In 1967, in the 70s really, in 1967 it said that Paul McCartney passed away when he was 28 years old, just before his 28th birthday, so 27. And in a conspiracy theory came out in the 1970s. And you know what I think about conspiracy theories? I think they're like a table. Conspiracy theories they're great, but they need a fucking leg to stand on. 4 would be great. And I feel like anytime like a conspiracy theorist gets their myth and their conspiracy debunked, they just come up with another conspiracy to go home and try to drive their point home further to the conspiracy that they believe in, that actually has no scientific merit or any background at all. They just want to be right. So it's really crazy that there's no actual proof, but there's these conspiracies anyway. So there was this conspiracy. It's been way debunked. And Paul McCartney is obviously alive, well, and vegetarian in England, doing great, living in a castle somewhere, making $1 billion. But there were a group of people, and still are, the deep dive down the rabbit hole, that think that Paul McCartney passed away in 1967 in a car accident. And they think you can see it on a lot of the Beatles album covers, primarily on the Beatles Sgt. Pepper album cover. They think that we're in the garden there. You can see, if you've seen the album covers, you can blow them up real big. I'll put them on my Instagram so you can see them. And they've got a grave for the Beatles, and they've got Paul's bass in there. And if you put the drums together, it looks like I died, and it's pointing to Paul up in the drums. And he's like a wax person. They got a doll in the corner with a driving glove that's bloodied, and a car full of blood that looks like Paul's coupe. Apparently Paul and Ringo got in a fight that day, and Paul was in a car crash and died. John Lennon apparently buried his body at Strawberry Fields, and you could hear when Strawberry Fields is actually played backwards, is Paul is dead. I miss him, And it's all funny, and it's all a weird conspiracy theory. And it's fun to get caught up in those things. It's definitely a fun deep dive down the rabbit hole. You can see it in, I don't know if you ever saw the Magical Mystery Tour, one of the weirdest Beatles films. One of my favorite albums, actually. It's strange. But there's a part where they all come down the stairs in a white sport coat and a red carnation, except for Paul McCartney, who has a black one in his lapel. And that would insinuate that he's the dead one. And then, John Lennon saying things like the walrus was Paul, insinuating he was like the walrus in Alice in Wonderland, his character was a liar. He tricked those little oysters and then he ate them, every one. You motherfucker. Little oysters, come walk with me in the sun. And he tricked them and then he ate them. Everyone, you motherfucker. I hate that walrus. But even look at the cover of Abbey Road. Look at their feet. Look down to their feet. Psst. John is dressed as the priest. Obviously, he's dressed in a nice outfit. George is dressed in all the Canadian tuxedo. He's got all jeans on. He's the grave digger. He's got his grave digger shoes on. Ringo is the pallbearer. He's dressed nicely. And then we got Paul with a cigarette in his hand, walking out of sync and out of step with all the other Beatles, and he's barefoot. Who else would be barefoot in a photo shoot except the corpse? And there are other pictures that day where he was wearing shoes. And if you see a car, it's a white Beetle car, and it's standing on its own in the upper left-hand corner of the shot, standing there by itself, and it says, I'd be 28. So he would be 28 if he lived to be on the Abbey Road cover. So there are all kinds of crazy things, like on the back of Sgt. Pepper, there's George pointing to a lyric in She's Leaving Home saying, Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins. And apparently it was a Wednesday morning on November 9th when Paul McCartney got in this car accident and John Lennon buried his body. So anyways, I think it's, bullshit, and it's funny. And like I say, conspiracies, they don't have many legs to stand on, but they're fun. And just look on these Beatle albums, do a deep dive down on Paul McCartney. These things, unfortunately though, they gained traction. This was before the internet and before we had social media. And now, misinformation and disinformation and bad information gains traction extremely quickly within seconds. At this time, it was gaining traction through people and through blah, 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 through the actual Twitterverse, through word of mouth. People were talking about it, and, it was gaining traction quickly, and general information, stirring was kind of happening. People were kind of making up and twisting their own narrative to what they wanted to see, to everything to, JFK's killers instead of just one killer, to, more than one, and people saying, finding what they wanted to find in photographs. Like I say, like cryptozoology, people saying, hey, I found Bigfoot. In this picture here, there's got to be Bigfoot. He doesn't have any remnants of him. We don't have any, artifacts of Bigfoot. We don't have any dead Bigfoots that we can do an autopsy on. I found Bigfoot. That's kind of the difference between a scientist who would find like a species of something, say we found this, we want to find this new species and tell you about it. We're going to investigate this new species and then we'll let you know what it is. So I think finding evidence before you find and assume that things are going on, you need some hard pressed evidence. And that's why we do autopsies. Now, I just think it's backward to be told a supposed fact and then become invested in it and just look for any reason for it to be true, and just regardless of any merit, just to support a theory and twist your own narrative. It's weird, to me at least. This week has been, so weird to me at least, completely. I made pretzels today, that was fun. And I taught the kids how to make pretzels. Now they're pretzel masters. They know how to make vegan pretzels, so easy. You just sub that butter that you're brushing them with some earth balance. We get some vegan basil. You can find these things anywhere. And if you're not vegan, you could just brush them with butter. And if you're eating eggs, you can brush them with eggs to give them a nice color. Sprinkle some salt on there. Maybe I'll even post the recipe if you're lucky. You can make them the same way with bagels. You can do the same thing if you like bagels. You just got to have a lot of baking soda and a lot of boiling water. So if you're doing this at home with kids, I know a lot of parents listen to this podcast after your kids have gone to bed or with your earbuds in, hopefully, because I swear like a motherfucker on this. Oh, Christ on a cracker. This week was fucking hard for me, I will say. I cried like a little bitch this week because I lost one of my great and probably my first musical and fashion and style idols ever, Miss Veronica Yvette Bennett, or better known to you as Ronnie Spector or Ronnie Ronette from the Ronettes. She passed away this week of cancer. Fuck you, cancer. Again, fuck cancer. She was my style inspiration. I mean, look at my eyeliner. The woman invented sexy, and she invented winged eyeliner. She wasn't afraid to wear things, that were tight and sexy. She saw other girl bands out there, and, she saw the Andrews Sisters and, the Shirelles and all these girls that were doing, their thing in party dresses, and they looked cute, and that was great for their girl band days, but she wanted sexy. So they had big hair. So I really, really respect Ronnie Spector. Many reasons. She was from Spanish Harlem. She was born in New York City in 1943 on August 10th. She was born in Spanish Harlem to parents of mixed descent. Her dad was Irish American and her mom was African American and of Cherokee descent. So she was already of a person of color, and she was already of mixed race, which back then was very, very difficult. Right now is difficult, unfortunately, because people are assholes. And then so she formed a band with her sister Estelle in Spanish Harlem, and they were raised by their mom because dad, I guess, took a real hike at a very young age. They were a very musical family, so they formed the band along with their cousin Nedra, and she was actually born from, her dad was Irish and her mom was Spanish, so she was Hispanic. So they had this huge, wonderful melting pot culturally in a band, but hard to get noticed as women, and then as women of color, and also like different colors being on the spectrum. So women then, it was very frowned upon. They were very much a minority, and they were very, very marginalized. But they had these big voices, and they originally marketed themselves as the Darling Sisters. And they started to get attention and even landed a gig at the Apollo. And this is a place where like Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells were playing, and James Brown was playing. Huge bands, or Otis Redding was playing here. The Apollo was huge. But for three girls that were growing up in Spanish Harlem, this was not too shabby. These were young girls, still teenage girls. So young, can't marry no one. So young at the Apollo. And so this group, like I say, they were marginalized, but they landed a gig at the Apollo, and then they landed a record deal with a small label. They signed them, and it was a subsidiary of a more white, shall I say, label. It was a black subsidiary of the label. Let's just come out and say it. They released a few singles, but no luck. But they ended up getting temporary jobs at a peppermint sort of club as go-go dancers. Totally by accident. They walked into a job interview one day, and the guy said, "Where are my dancers?" And they kind of looked around. There's no other girls, and they were dressed kind of sexy, and they were all make-upped up, and they kind of said, "We're here." And the girl says, "We're not here for any..." And Ronnie told them, "Shut up. We're here for the job." So they got jobs. So they completely changed girl groups for me in the mid-60s. They Joan Holloway'd them for me. If anyone's seen Mad Men, it's like, if you want people to take you seriously, honey, stop dressing like a little girl. Take off your fucking Holly Hobby dress and stop dressing like you're 12. So they were sexy. They weren't juvenile looking. So in the mid-60s, they were signed with Phillies Records, which was obviously by the fucking murderer and sociopath Phil Spector. Let's not focus on him, because I really think that Ronnie Spector is what contributed to his fame with the wall of sound thing he was trying to build. But I always found what Phil Spector tried to do with the wall of sound as angry. I found that people like Brian Wilson took the wall of sound, and because he really idolized Phil Spector, not for his personal shortcomings, but he was, praised as a wunderkind, and unfortunately got a fucking pass in the music industry, even though he's a complete asshole, an abusive asshole. I'll get into that later, because he created the wall of sound. I really think it was Ronnie Spector and the Ronettes, the Teddy Bears, Ike and Tina Turner, and Darlene Love that really created the sound for the wall of sound. He may have put a lot of orchestration over top of that, but a lot of people can do that. A lot of people can layer. Brian Wilson did that, and he did it in a very beautiful way for the Beach Boys. And so once they did Baby I Love You on Phillies Records, they just blew up. And then Be My Baby came out, the do, 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 ch, do, 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 ch, ch, ch. And I remember Be My Baby from like Martin Scorsese movies. Obviously, a lot of people will probably remember them from Dirty Dancing. Nobody Puts Baby in the Corner. But Be My Baby for me actually was a song that reminded me of a Beach Boys song. And it's so good. Like every time I hear it, it gives me chills. And it's Ronnie Spector's voice. She's got a beautiful, beautiful voice. She's got a resonant, shrill voice, and she's sassy. Now, the Ronettes ended up performing with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. When they were in England, actually, the Stones opened for the Ronettes, which is amazing. They ended up becoming good friends. Keith Richards and Ronnie Ronette kept up a good friendship all the years. She actually ended up almost dating John Lennon. When the Beatles would come over to America after the British invasion got really big, Spanish Harlem, a lot of the kids weren't going up there because it was kind of a rough area. And I'm putting that in quotations because I don't think it was rough. But the Beatles could go there. They could go to a diner with the girls and the Ronettes, and they could hang out, and they could have bacon and eggs, and they could just chill. And then the kids would bother them. No one asked them for an autograph, and they wouldn't get chased down the street. They could just be normal humans. So, I mean, they're an amazing band. She broke up with the Ronettes in about 1967, and in 1968 married Phil Spector, which did not last super long. He kept her in their mansion, in his mansion, as really a prisoner. He had 5 servants. He adopted her 3 babies, all 3 of which she had no knowledge of. Now, I mean, she's passed now, but she has 2 of her own biological children, 2 sons. She had with her second husband. But Phil Spector just locked her in a room. So, I mean, all she did was drink and smoke all day and watch TV because she was locked in this 23-room mansion with servants, locked in, literally physically locked in and left in there. And as soon as they got married, she lost her identity. It wasn't Ronnie anymore. It was Veronica. I mean, she loved being Ronnie Spector. That's who she was. She was spunky. It was her personality. So she was married to Phil Spector and prisoner to him, and she was tormented by him. She turned to drugs and even tried to commit suicide. But then between 1972 and 1974, she got away from him. She called her mom, as most people do. She called her mom and said, "Mom, you got to get me out of here." And it took her mom 3 days to get her out of the mansion. And in 1974, she got a divorce from Phil Spector. And now, I mean, obviously, Phil Spector's been in the limelight for murders and murdering Lana Turner and lots of other bad things. But I mean, Ronnie Ronette and Ronnie Spector, she recorded with the Ramones. And she did Take Me Home Tonight, Be My Little Baby, with like Eddie Money, and like just so good. She really modeled her voice after Frankie Lyman from Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. And that's another band. She just thought they were so amazing because they were another band that was mixed race as well. There were a few Spanish boys in the band. There were a few boys that were African American in the band. And the lead singer was like, 12. And, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, why do fools fall in love? She has a voice like Frankie Lyman. She sounds like a 12-year-old boy, which is amazing. And so she kind of grew up, singing to that. And I like I say, I love Ronnie Spector. I love what she did. I love that she's an abuse survivor. I love that how she grew up singing. She grew up singing, "Take me out to the ball game." She used to go to a field with her dad when she was young, before her dad left. And she used to sing for extra hot dogs and peanuts and popcorn at baseball games, and people used to give them to her because she had such a voice. And she used to sing like most kids do, in the back of her grandmother's house, in front of the mirror, and her cousins would ooh ah ooh ah ooh ah ooh ah. And she'd, "Why do birds sing so gay?" And so, you know what I mean? It's just, people didn't have the TV to put on then. They weren't distracted by iPads. They weren't distracted by TikTok or social media. They weren't distracted by podcasts. I hope you're being distracted by this one, obviously. But I mean, my tribute to Veronica Yvette Bennett was like, she is absolutely the first and last reason I started anything with any girl bands whatsoever. The Ronettes were the absolute reason, even though that she didn't die at 27. She died in my heart. Oh, it's terrible. 78 years old. Cancer took another person. It makes me sad that, that she's gone now. But I'm going to pay tribute to her in the ways that I best can. Lots of more singing covers, lots more music coming to you, lots more art coming to you. And by the way, speaking of art, someone has won the painting contest. I'm going to DM you tomorrow on Sunday and let you know who you are. If you picked red, you are the person, you are one of the people who went into a random Google generator, and I know who won. I'm not going to tell you now. I'm just going to use they, so no one knows who it is. And they won this, and I'm going to personalize it to them when they let me know what they want me to put on the back of it, and I will send it to your house or your residence, wherever you live, and you'll have a painting from me in the mail very soon. If you want to know where you can find me, you can find me on Instagram at 21st Century Rocker Mom. You can find me ticking and a talking and a walking on TikTok. I am walking on TikTok. You can come with me on mental health walks. I'm at 21st Century Rocker Mom there, or the real Tanya Candler. Why am I not verified? I don't know. I get this asked question a lot. The blue check mark doesn't really mean a lot to me. I know who I am. You know who I am. I go on there live enough. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Tanya Candler. Follow me. I will follow you back. I like to see what you're saying. It's fun. And if you want to find me on YouTube, I'm always on YouTube. It's Tanya Candler channel. You can find me on all your favorite streaming platforms. Don't forget to click subscribe, hit a little bell, hit a notification. You'll get a notification every time I have a new video out. And it was lovely to spend some time with you. And I can't wait to hang with y'all next week when I talk about a very touchy subject. I love you. Have a wonderful week ahead. And may peace be with each and every one of y'all.